Lee Summit is your destination for big city vibes and small town charm.
Head to the downtown Lee Summit Farmers Market, where local meets fresh. Then grab a cup of coffee and discover a variety of shops and boutiques just around the corner. Continue the fun in downtown Lee Summit at a retro arcade bar. Discover your new beer at one of our 6 locally owned breweries. Cool off with some handcrafted cocktails at happy hour. End the night with live music and good company. Lee Summit, Missouri.
Hello, Lee Summit. I'm Jordan. Here's your flash briefing for the week of July 7th. City Council will meet for a regular session Tuesday night at 6 in Council Chambers in City Hall. Meetings are open to the public or watch live on the city's YouTube channel. If you can't watch, catch the recorded meeting on demand on the YouTube channel or by subscribing to the Council Debrief newsletter, which breaks down 3 to 4 key agenda items. Subscribe at cityofls.net. The 2025 Water Quality Report is now available for public viewing. The city is committed to providing safe and reliable drinking water. The report details the testing and treatment processes that ensure our top water meets all federal and state regulations. View the report on the city's website. Celebrate the 150th anniversary of the Lee Summit Fire Department at a fun-filled open house on July 19th from 9 a.m. to noon at Fire Station Number 4, located at 5031 Northeast Lakewood Way. Bring the whole family to tour the fire station and walk through an inflatable house to learn about fire safety. Don't miss this opportunity to honor their legacy and join the celebration. And Jamaican Jam is back at Legacy Park Amphitheater on July 18th at 7 p.m. Enjoy the tunes of the islands for free without leaving Lee Summit. Find more details at rocktheamp.net. Thanks for listening and have a great week.
So many of our past successes were made possible by understanding the multitude of perspectives in our community. When we take the time to see the world through someone else's eyes, we enrich our own understanding and foster an environment where everyone can thrive. When I see the renovations we've made to our parks, I see an investment not just in essential infrastructure, but in people that builds community and directly impacts the physical and social well-being of our residents.
I see equity, inclusive playgrounds where people from all walks of life can come together.
I see a place to play.
When I see the development we have helped facilitate in our community, I see the results of solution-oriented decision-making, with job opportunities, easier access to goods and services, housing options, improved infrastructure, and increased economic growth.
I see projects created through collaboration between the city and developers that will provide value, benefit, and opportunity to the Lee Summit community.
I see growth in community and a way to connect more people to their food.
When I see the major road improvements underway, I see well-connected and safe transportation that enhances mobility and increases access to local businesses, spurring economic growth, safe deliveries to homes, and happy trips to ball games and activities.
I see improved roadways, added sidewalks, and shared use paths for pedestrians and cyclists, safe transportation and recreation for all.
I see better connectivity, increased lanes, less congestion, and just make it easier to get around.
When I see the investments we've made in public safety, I see enhanced emergency preparedness and first responders who are ready on a moment's notice to protect the community and deliver immediate life-saving care.
I see the city value its fire department employees come to fruition in recruitment, retention, and a positive culture.
I see a community that can respond to emergencies quickly. My whole family lives in Lee Summit, so there's a lot of peace of mind there.
What we do is not just about making decisions and funding budgets. It's about enriching the quality of life for all of our residents. It's about realizing that a building is not just steel and concrete, a park is not just metal and ropes, a road is not just asphalt, and a city is not just land. It's about the experiences we provide to all people of all generations and backgrounds.
Officers en route, 914, armed robbery.
I have always volunteered in the community and I was always really involved, but then I ran for school board. Whenever I got done with my term, I just felt like I had more to give. It's always been my goal from day one is to get everyone in the community connected and working together, and I always called it a spirit of community. Well, mayor's 24/7 and I have a job. I've had to work really hard at compartmentalizing, is what I call it. So during this time, I'm going to do work. During this time, I'm going to be mayor, even though I can get a call at any moment about mayor stuff. And so I've had to even work that much harder at setting aside time for myself or for family. So I like to exercise, I like to work out. Hillary's my wife. She actually goes to work out with me as well. And we do like to go downtown to the shops. We make sure we maximize our time together. I mean, I've got 2 kids as well, and we spend a lot of time with them, or whatever time they will give us these days. And I have a dog. I think most people kind of know me know I have to have a dog. We have so much development going on, and we're growing fairly quickly, so we have a lot of infrastructure needs, and sometimes we have gaps in infrastructure, and we've always managed to get by, but with this kind of growth, we're really having to be creative and look at our options and just have a good plan for water, sewer, roads, and more. If we want to grow the most healthy way, we need a diverse economy. We do have a lot of retail that's opened up here, and there's been new construction for retail. We really need to focus in the future on bringing some, well-paying jobs here, good, strong employers that want to be located in this incredible community of now 101,000 people. A lot of our workforce does commute to work still, so they leave Lee Summit to go to work, and it'd be nice if we could keep some of those citizens right here in our community. The times I feel most proud are actually when I'm in the community and I see the community come together.
We have Buddy in the house. Mr. Mayor!
The tree lighting is always very fun. I always feel very proud. It's just a great warm feeling. The same thing goes for when the council will do something and we come together and make a good decision together. There's been a few of those that you go home feeling like a winner. And one of them was when we put together the downtown farmers market, when we bought the land, and it became real, all that hard work. But also the Diversity and Inclusion Commission, that was months and months of discussions and conversations that were really hard to have, and we went ahead and moved forward and as a council all together, and I was very, very proud of that. And there are a few things that the citizens have done that have really helped us tremendously. First, in the middle of a pandemic, they passed a use tax, which is a way for us to collect sales tax whenever someone purchases online. That helps shore up our revenues so that we can continue to provide as high quality services that our city provides. And it helps us take care of our employees, it helps us with our public safety and more. So I can't be more thankful to the citizens for that. Lee's Summit has the opportunity to have a major impact on the economy in the Kansas City area. We already, as an economy, are rolling along with such a high median income. We have an amazing workforce here that are paying taxes, they're paying property taxes, they're paying sales taxes, they're keeping our economy rolling, and we really are getting the attention of all our neighbors. And I think that what's going to happen is you're going to see the opportunity for us to really get everybody's attention when businesses start moving here, bigger businesses and more so. You should try to find a way to give back to the community, whether it's at the city level, citizen committees, or just participating in some of our community conversations whenever we have those opportunities. It's worth coming out of your shell or taking that leap of faith and just showing up and saying, what can I do or how can I help? The more that we do this together, the more wonderful the community is.
To order the Community Economic Development Committee meeting for Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Hodges?
Here.
Vice Chair Carlisle?
Here.
Councilmember Pryor?
Here.
Councilmember Funk?
Here.
Planning Commissioner Tracton?
Thank you. Can I get an approval of the agenda?
Chair, I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Get a roll call, please.
Vice Chair Carlisle.
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor.
Aye.
Councilmember Funk.
Aye.
Chair Hodges.
Aye. All right, so moving on to public comments. I believe we have one public comment. Ms. Rader, Councilmember Rader.
Is this on? It is.
Like you were going to sing the national anthem.
Esteemed council members, my name is Cinda Rader. I live at 212 Northwest Spruce Street, and I am here to speak to you as a citizen tonight. So I dropped off a little flyer for you to look at, and I'm going to tell you a little bit of the background of why I have brought this to you, my concerns. So tonight we're going to talk, Major Mark Walters is going to talk to you about a change that they made in this, the ordinance amending Chapter 4 of alcoholic beverages. And as you read on that top section A, there is part of what you're going to hear with her tonight. But here's what I'm adding. But before I tell you all this, I want to tell you kind of why I decided to talk to you about this tonight. So a few weeks ago, as you remember, we had an appeal come to us for the Galaxy liquor, and it was within 100 feet of the church. And I will tell you that I was a little bit shocked at the fact that a liquor store could be as close as 300 feet to a liquor store. I mean, a church and a school. The school was that close, could be that close to a liquor store. So, and I don't think there's a lot of parents or people out there that know that a liquor store can be that, or a liquor establishment, cigarettes, whatever that may be, that they sell, liquor, beverages, that could be that close to a school. And this one just so happened to be right across from Lee Summit North. So I believe if you remember on the council, I said that I would like for the school to be no closer than 1,000 feet. And so what I have learned is that Missouri has state statutes that dictate that it has to be within 100 to 300 feet. So here was my alternative that I would like to present to you for your consideration to take on to council, to recommend to take on to council. And it reads, I'll read it for you. It shall be unlawful to sell, dispense, or give away alcoholic beverages. Now that's what's coming before you with Major Walters, beverage nor shall a license be granted for the sale of alcoholic beverages within 300 feet of any school, church, or other building regularly used as a place of religious worship. What that means is there will be a flat prohibition. Oh, they've gone. Oh, I'm sorry. Learning things up here.
Now you're upside down.
You got it?
Oh,
Thank you. Where was I? A flat prohibition of, in other words, the ordinance is the ordinance, and it cannot be repealed or appealed. So I guess I would ask for, again, for you guys to take a hard look at this, decide if this is something that we really think is important. I think it is. I think it's really important for the health and well-being of our children. I don't have kids that age, that are the age that want to get into these kinds of things anymore, but I still care about the children and the kids in this community, the high school students, having these types of establishments so close to schools. I just think it's our responsibility as citizens and council to make sure that we're very careful in these types of ordinances and that we stick to the ordinances. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to business. We'll go to A 2025-6990. Can I get an approval of the May 14, 2025 Community and Economic Development Committee action letter?
Chair,
Yes.
I move to approve the May 14th, 2025 Community and Economic Development Committee action letter.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Can we get roll call, please?
Councilmember Pryor,
Aye.
Councilmember Funk,
Aye.
Chair Hodges,
Aye.
Vice Chair Carlisle.
Aye.
All right, and that passes. Moving on to B, TMP-3370, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 1, in general, Section 4-13, dispensing alcoholic beverages, issuance of liquor license near school or church of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri. We have Major Walters.
Yes, hello. Major Walters, Police Department. Really, this is language cleanup for subsection B so that it mirrors subsection A, adding dispense or give away. That's really it. It wasn't brought forth by anyone. It was just something that legal determined needed to be updated and added into the subsection.
Do you have any questions?
So for clarification, that Councilmember Rader brought up the changes. So we allow up to 100 feet, correct?
300.
300 feet is when you have to get approval from council to issue, if it's within the 300 feet range, to get approval from council.
Correct.
Outside the 300 feet, you are automatically allowed to
Correct.
issue the liquor license.
For example, we just recently had a business, and they were, I think, around 290 feet or so.
Yeah.
So there was no approval.
So I guess my concern would be, how do we, Mr. Elam, would this be something we would have to grandfather some places in? If we went from 100 feet to 300 feet, would those places that are already issued a liquor license, that's fine. And then my other part of that question is, we see a lot of churches pop up in strip centers now and that kind of thing. What if the liquor store is already existing and a church goes in?
I think those are all things that we would need to look at, and as the implementation of any potential change like this would be required. And the liquor licenses, I do believe, have a renewal process as well, overall. So, but that is something that we would have to take into consideration if we were looking to change the ordinance in that manner.
Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. So so right now it's already 300 feet, right?
Yes.
Okay, so the only thing we're adding is dispense or giveaway.
Correct.
Okay, so it's not changing except just dispense or
Nothing is
giveaway.
changing. Subsection A already
Yeah.
has dispense or giveaway, so we're just adding.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, and then, so Councilmember Rader mentioned, and I know it was just a public comment, but she mentioned not being able to come before council, like it was just a law as it stood. So is that, they can still come before council though, correct?
Yes, the way it's currently written.
The way it's current, okay, so she wants to change it from.
Correct, I think that's what I understand it to be. And I
Okay.
think that would be some discussion for city staff, just with
Yeah.
other things that may develop over
Mhm.
time.
Yep, okay, thank you.
So is that something we need to change now if we wanted to, or how? Okay, that's what I was curious about. So we need to just continue this on as you have it, and then, okay. All right, any other comments, questions? All right, I would look for a motion.
Now I have to figure out which one we're on. Okay, I move to advance to council TMP 3370, for approval, TMP 3370, an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Alcoholic Beverages, Article 1, in general, Section 4 through 13, dispensing alcoholic beverages, issuance of liquor license near school or church of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lee Summit, Missouri.
Second. All right, have a motion and a second. Can I get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Funk?
Aye.
Chair Hodges?
Aye.
Vice Chair Carlisle?
Aye.
Councilmember Pryor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Major Walters. All right, so moving on to discussion of 2025-6994, updating panhandling, loitering, and soliciting ordinances. Mr. Rucker.
All right.
Or,
Good afternoon. I'll go with afternoon. Members of the committee, I am not Ed Rucker. I'm Ryan Elam, Assistant City Manager. I'm just going to kind of kick this off and then turn it over to Mr. Rucker. So this panhandling, loitering, and soliciting item here was an item that was recommended to be discussed by CEDC a couple of months ago as it related to aggressive panhandling specifically. So as a result of that, we had a lot of research and a lot of discussions amongst the legal staff, having various roles, with the legal staff being the staff that is the one that is interpreting and providing those legal opinions on the ordinance, as well as on the enforcement side. That's the coordination with the police department. Now, our police department's role in this has really been to help identify how things can be enforced and where enforcement challenges may be, with the legal staff and the rest of the city staff's role being how do we craft that language, what are those different considerations and things like that and what that looks like. So just wanted to set that stage that this has been a joint collaborative effort as we kind of look at this, and the purpose of this presentation here is to have a conversation about what tools we currently have available to us, what regulations currently exist, and where there might be some gaps and what some of those things may look like. This is not a draft ordinance that's before you tonight. We do have a draft ordinance that we can prepare and bring forward through the process. So this is a discussion to provide education, seek feedback, and have open dialogue over there. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Rucker.
Thank you, Madam Chair, committee members. Essentially, this conversation is to make sure that we don't miss something, okay? We need to understand from you as the elected officials if there are specific problems that our staff internally has just simply not seen, okay? You're essentially our canaries at the end of the coal mine. You're our early warning system for if there are civic harms going on that we have not seen, that you have seen, please tell me about it. You know, basically, let me see if I can run this thing. We find that there are essentially 5 places that we would be concerned about this having an issue. At the front door Quick Trip, just on a regular street, inside the downtown corridor, in a city park, and private door and home to home, okay? That's a broad list. There may be other more specific places, but we need to section out some of those because we believe we can, in fact, impose different rules in different parts of town, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So panhandling basically is the act of asking for something, okay? Whether it's really aggressive, okay? Whether it's just one question, or whether it's completely passive. It's the guy who sits at 350 Highway and 63rd Street and just, you know, with his sign out $1 for coffee kind of thing. Loitering is a different idea. Loitering is the idea of remaining in a public place with no clear purpose. And it's not that you have to have a clear purpose. We live in a free society. You do not have to atone for or explain why you happen to be in a public park. You got an absolute right to be in the public park. But there may be places where you're standing in front of Quick Trip for 3.5 hours, and the guy at Quick Trip, the manager may prefer that you just sort of move on, okay? Usually loitering comes from repeated complaints from businesses and residents. A difference is the kind of expressive conduct we have. Now, among the lawyers, the reason this is a hot button issue and a problem, okay, there used to be a fella who spent most of his life in front of the Barnes & Noble on 47th Street at the Plaza asking people for money. And he was a generalized pain in the neck. He also got to the point he was aggressive. He would follow people and complain at them. Finally, Kansas City arrested him. At the end of that process, Fred Slough a good local lawyer, won him some money and got his attorney's fees paid because they didn't have a good enough ordinance. We do not want to walk you into that kind of trap. So hence we have to take this longer, more deliberative process in terms of how to do this. What regulations do we have right now? We have a peddlers and solicitors ordinance that we think pretty well covers the people that go door to door. We have a specific section on harassment and disturbance of the public peace. But honestly, in our discussions internally, we don't think we have enough. We do think that we can make some improvements in what your Code of Ordinance does say, okay? We're talking about two things. Basically, a panhandling ordinance and a loitering ordinance. And I will confess that in the finest traditions of my profession, I have stolen, perjured, and borrowed everything I can find from people who've done this before. What we are looking at are drafts that basically Kansas City, Missouri has had and passed. They have a pretty first-class legal department. I used to be part of it. And we think that they're on the right track. We understand that their initial panhandling ordinance was in fact, and I do not have this as firsthand information, but worked out with the ACLU and essentially negotiated with the lawyers who would otherwise be saying, yeah, you can't do that, that's unconstitutional. So they have some sort of earlier test. What we want to do is address aggressive panhandling and loitering hotspots. In other words, the two real civic harms, at least that's the way our internal discussions have gone, have been the people who won't leave you alone, okay, and the people who are specifically out of place, okay? But we have to balance this with the First Amendment, okay? Now we get into 5 minutes of law school, okay? The First Amendment in this context is a burden for us as a city. Reed versus Town of Gilbert was 10 years ago. Justice Thomas basically writes that for government, that's you guys, to restrict speech, that means any speech, you have to show a compelling governmental interest. Any restriction on speech, any restriction, according to Reed, is subject to a standard lawyers call strict scrutiny. And you can't pass strict scrutiny unless I can show a compelling governmental interest. Unfortunately, there is no compelling governmental interest in a citizen being able to walk into Quick Trip and some guy not saying, hey, can you spare $1 for a cup of coffee? Because if we ban that, we also ban, hey, can you give money to the orphans? Hey, would you like to contribute to the Firefighters Relief Fund? Hey, I'm running for city council. Hey, I think the house is burning down next door. Do you have a phone we can call 50 with? Any of those communications, they're all the same communication as far as the court's concerned, okay? So then to address that problem at Quick Trip, the issue is, well, you get to talk once, and that's it, once, okay? After you know that the question isn't, hey, the house next door is burning down, let's call the fire department, it's, can you give me $5 for a sandwich, okay? They don't get to ask the second time, okay? The compelling governmental interest is in the idea that people are able to walk freely through society without being unnecessarily overly bothered. Not never bothered. Never bothered I can't get you to. Sorry, this is a free society and being annoyed is just part of the way we work. But we can get you to the point that you don't have to answer the same question twice. The other thing we talk about is the council needs to make clear findings. When we get to the draft, and I believe Ryan and everybody who's worked on this project anticipates we'll be looking at a draft at the next meeting. When we get to a draft, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to ask you to make some clear, definitive findings about places that we do actually want to restrict any panhandling. Right now, we're looking at 3 spots. We're looking at downtown Lee Summit, okay, Green Street Market, and city parks, okay? This community has substantial investments in each one of those. And each one of those, I think we can make a good case. You are entitled to preserve a larger piece of, a larger standard of public peace, okay, than you would simply be walking down Shipman Road, okay? Also, it's noted here the question of civilian witnesses or complainants needed for enforcement. Now, what some people will always point out real quickly is we convict felony drunk drivers based on professional testimony alone, okay? You can literally go to prison for 5 years based on the testimony of one police officer. So they go to me, Well, Mr. Rucker, why are you looking for civilian witnesses in this context? And I'll tell you why. I'm looking for civilian witnesses in this context because the harm is different. And to make sure you get a circuit judge, because we begin with the premise that, well, we go through municipal court, every one of these cases is subject to what lawyers call trial de novo, and it goes to circuit court. And so I begin with a process that if this is going to wind up in circuit court, I have to have a case that a circuit judge will be interested in. To get a case a circuit judge will be interested in, I am trying to get the attention of someone who is arraigning murder 1 this morning, okay? And if I come up with something that sounds picky and small, he's not going to be interested. Just plain the way the world works. Trust me, I've been doing this for 48 years, okay? However, when I walk in and I say, I'd like to present Ryan Elam, he's my witness, I've got a different story to tell. And I am substantially in a better position. That will put Abby Pinnell, your prosecutor, in a substantially better position. So we're looking for ways to do that. One of the things we focus in terms of the downtown corridors, we got pedestrians. It's a unique economic and cultural hub. What's happened in the downtown here in the last 30 years is fabulous. It is something worth protecting and preserving, okay? We want to deter and get rid of the aggressive panhandling, period, but we want no panhandling right there. If we can make a case that this is something so unique to protect, let's just put it aside. There are plenty of other places in the city of Lee Summit you can ask for money for your charity, okay? And we're certainly not going to be barring anybody from saying, hey, the building next door is on fire, do you have a cell phone, okay? We will have to make sure we make clear notice to the offender. If you've ever watched traffic court, one of the routine questions is, officer, what was that, the speed limit there? 35 miles an hour. And were signs clearly saying 35 miles an hour, clearly posted on that day, both before and after the defendant was stopped, so he would have seen one? Yes, okay? You gotta give notice. We will have to give some notice. We will have to have some better signs. Not better signs, some new signs. What we think we can present for you, what we think we can get, but what I'm here to talk about and answer your questions about, is we can get a narrowly tailored panhandling ordinance. It's going to have two kinds of panhandling, regular panhandling and aggressive panhandling. Aggressive panhandling is the second sentence, the second question. We can ban that, period, okay? You don't get to ask the second question. If I'm walking into Quick Trip, under the draft we've been discussing, and somebody comes up and says, hey buddy, you got $5 for a sandwich? No, I'm not. He doesn't get to ask a second time, okay? If he does, then that's enough. And I am then your civilian witness that, yes, this was an infraction. We want a loitering ordinance, much the same, but the loitering ordinance also gives, for instance, the Quick Trip manager the ability to move that person off. The ability to call 5-0 and say, officer, I can't get this guy to leave, okay? He's bothering my business customers, okay? So, as I mentioned, we include downtown with the specific provisions to make it the more protected space, just as our public parks and just as Green Street, where we've invested significant money in creating a place that's supposed to be peaceful for everybody, okay? We have engaged in ourselves with a significant discussion, and as we roll these ordinances out, and as we get used to using them, we will have to engage with businesses and community groups and residences and make sure they know what tools are there and why and how they are. And then, frankly, after you get signage, the other thing we'll do is, we're lawyers. Our rules change, okay? We learn new stuff. Judges change their minds. The law develops and the law grows. Okay, it is not a static thing. And so if we need to adjust it, we'll adjust it. If it doesn't work, we'll find a workaround. If we get to the point that what we've created this year, a year from now, isn't effective, we'll figure out why, and we'll take another whack at it, and we'll do it again. We would like to, and assuming that this conversation goes well enough, circulate some drafts for review, okay? We'll write the predicate clause. You know, when you all adopt an ordinance, your first language, whereas, is all predicate language. Your enacted language is the part that comes, now therefore be it and the city council operates as such. So we will have to do some good drafting on the predicate clauses at the beginning to explain to any trier of fact in the future, these are the conclusions we've made. We have a significant investment in Green Street, and this is why we want to protect it. Downtown is significantly different than it was 50 years ago. This is why it's worth protecting, okay? Our public park system is a jewel. This is why it's worth protecting. And we'll have to make those things, okay? And those will be findings that you make. You won't take more than one vote, but sometimes it'll be a little longer. My best war story about that was when I was at Osage Beach, we had to withdraw a funeral protest ordinance. And a retired Colonel, Mr. Scott, on my Board of Aldermen was livid. And we talked about it, and I explained that, you know, we're going to get sued and we're going to lose. This is overbroad. I promise you I will adopt the first one I can find that works, okay? But we then wrote 3 pages of whereas to explain to the voters why we did what we did. In this case, your whereas are going to explain to the judge why you did what you did, what findings we made. And then we'll have to communicate the guidelines. The police department is intimately involved with this in the sense that they're the ones who are going to be responsible on the streets for doing this. A lot of the improvements in this presentation, and I will tell you it's 50% better than my first draft, come from Captain Schaefer, okay, and from Ryan. I think that the difference here is because we are dealing with the law and because we are starting from the assumption of what does Abby Pennell have to be able to defend in front of a circuit judge, okay? The lawyers sort of took the laboring oar in the beginning of this. That's where we are, and that's kind of where we'd like to go. But if there's anybody with any discussions here or in the audience, okay, who's got comments or concerns or specific, even specific war stories about what was a concern, okay, we need to hear that, either now or later. You guys all have a copy of it. You've got my name and email. If you want to contact me directly, that's fine too. I'm still your lawyer no matter what time it is, so either way. But that's what the plan is. That's where you are. Trust me when I say that there are lawyers who make their careers dealing with just this kind of an issue, okay? That's all they do. It's all they do is First Amendment law, okay? And it's a detail-oriented, fact-specific kind of analysis that we can be ready for, but it does take some time to get ready. So that's it. That's all from me. That's Law School 101, and I hope less than 20 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great presentation. Do we have any questions? Go ahead.
So it sounded like we really focused a lot, Ed, on downtown.
Right.
I've seen my column, I think they've been called the Orange Suit Society, where they set up shop in front of Target. They've set up shop in front of TJ Maxx and places like that, and they're pretty aggressive. I mean, can we get our community partners to post signs?
We can certainly offer them the sign. They can certainly post a sign. If you adopt a loitering ordinance, we may well get to the point that on the private property in front of Target, the Target manager can say, hey, Orange Suit Society, guys, you're out, okay? You're here. You don't have a reason to be here. You're here pursuing a specifically private purpose, your purpose, okay, on my business premises. And my business premises is reserved for me and my customers to come and go. So yeah, that's one of the ways we would target the loitering ordinance to move them off. Although on the panhandling ordinance, because of the 2 sides, there will only be aggressive panhandling we think we're able to ban at that point at Target's entrance. And that's the second question.
I mean, they even set up tables. I mean, they have tables and banners, and they just go at it.
If the private property owner allows them to do that, there's nothing we can do about it. Let's take an example.
Chief.
I'll give you an example. Girl Scout cookie sales in front of Walmart. Walmart wants to allow the Girl Scouts to sell cookies in front of Walmart. There's not much we can do about it, period. Because that's Walmart's private property. So what we're trying to do is give Walmart the tool to address it when they don't want it there.
Are you finished?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
All right, Chair Pryor.
Thank you. So I was wondering, and you may have addressed this, but things like the boot block and stuff downtown, would that affect that at all?
The boot walk, like for what we firefighters do routinely, usually those are solicitations that have already been filed under your solicitation ordinance with an organized group, and those people really don't get impacted by that. They're not, and maybe this is a value judgment on my part, in which case I'm kind of out of my lane, but they're not the societal harm we're talking about here, okay? The police benefit fund, the firefighters raising money for injured kids, that's not the societal harm we're talking about here. What we're talking about is the right of a citizen to freely walk through their community, okay? Go into a store, buy something, walk out, and not be unnecessarily harassed. And on that case, no, I can't get you in and out of the store without a question, because I don't know what the question is, and Reed and Justice Thomas told me I can't value the question, one speech over another, but I can darn well get you in and out without a second question. I think the second question is a bridge too far for the person asking for the money.
Okay, thank you. And then I don't know if I should bring this up during this presentation or this discussion, but I also, with the World Cup coming and Lee Summit growing, everything around us growing, ordinances like a drunken public ordinance, if we could look at something like that, and a prowler ordinance. Those are
ordinance?
Prowler.
Prowler.
I just feel like it's super important, especially with our city growing, make sure that that our police officers have all the tools they need to effectively do their job. So I think we've seen with places like downtown days, when you give them an inch, they'll take a mile, and now everyone's trying to get that back under control, and it doesn't necessarily have a reputation of being a super safe place. So I just want to, before the World Cup and before a lot of the growth happens, just stay on top of or be proactive for a lot, yeah. So, oh, well, I think the loitering ordinance would cover the parking garage, right? Yeah.
Yeah. The loitering ordinance is going to be more effective. Your parking garage here is a different deal, though, okay? Where the loitering, well, and again, sorry for the law school, but the loitering ordinance helps private businesses. A public structure is a different deal. You're going to wind up with a loitering ordinance with more than one paragraph in it. Sorry, guys, it's just the law biz. But the societal harm of me standing in front of Councilman Carlisle's business, okay, asking for money, obstructing her business per se, is qualitatively different than me in a public structure hanging out. There are things we can do about that. Off the top of my head, it's all legal BS and not worth what you paid for it. But yes, I understand that if you're looking at like what happens with the World Cup, and we get an influx of people, and we get people hanging out in a public structure anywhere, okay, you can manage some of that. But we have, again, then, our burden, our burden for writing it for you, and your burden for voting for it, is going to be to detail and specify the public harm, the adverse impact on a civil society that comes from that, okay? And yes, there are adverse impacts on civil society that come from that. You know, it's some of it's no-brainer, okay? People shouldn't have to be afraid walking to their cars, period.
What can we do about, what kind of ordinance do we need for the parking garage? We were threatened the other night after we left a city council meeting. So by people hanging out in our parking garage that hang out there consistently every night. So what can we do? How can we factor our parking garage, even though it's a public garage, into something like this?
I'll tell you what, please don't hate me, but I'm going to have to give you that famous lawyer answer. I will get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. That's perfect.
The answer you get off the top of my head will be ipso facto worthless, and David and Brian will be laughing at me for getting pushed around if I don't have enough guts to say, I don't know off the top of my head.
That's perfect. Yep, thank you.
You guys have any questions? Okay, go for it.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. That was a really good presentation. I appreciate the detail of that. So I guess I missed the part about where's the problem that's not currently being addressed. So there's 3 ordinances currently in effect that the police
Right.
have to use to control harassment, disturbance of peace, which you could loosely define some of this, I don't know. Are the police having trouble with this in our community, I guess is the big question?
Some of the harassment ordinances require intent, okay? Require Abby to prove intent when she's in court. What I'm trying to move you away from is having her have that element, okay? I want a panhandling ordinance that simply says, the second question is the offense, not whether you intended to be offensive. It's not whether, I asked Councilmember Funk, hey, you got $5 for a cup of coffee, and he says no, okay? If I ask him again, okay, and he says no, I may have thoroughly annoyed him, but then to prove that's harassment, under most harassment ordinances, I have to prove that I intended to harass the guy, okay?
Well,
And my answer in
with
hang
that
on,
what about chapter 20, solicitor peddler ordinance? I mean,
that basically goes for folks going door to door.
okay,
That basically covers your neighborhoods,
gotcha.
okay?
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is, what we also want to do is simplify the process that happens in court. The corrosion happens if we can't get convictions, okay? Where the stick happens is when we get routine convictions, okay? And then people pay attention, okay? It's sort of like, why do you guys buy those expensive radar guns? Because you get routine convictions every time an officer says, I used the dang thing, okay? The other way we get routine convictions in court is to have a simple list of things to prove. And intent is a difficult thing to prove in court. Intent's usually something we talk with felony conduct, okay? And pardon me, Madam Chair, but just a tiny little bit of law school here. The law doesn't permit things. The law prohibits things. You live in a free society, okay? Everything that is not prohibited is essentially permitted. We prohibit 2 kinds of conduct. Those things in law school that we are taught are what are called, in the Latin, mala in se, bad in and of themselves. Murder, stealing, trespassing, okay? Those things are simply flat out immoral under any stretch of the imagination in any belief system. Then we have what we call those things that are mala prohibitum, things that the law prohibits, okay, that aren't necessarily evil, as a belief or a value system would say, but things that the law prohibits because this society has decided that this kind of conduct we don't want to see. The ordinances we're discussing tonight are those things that would be mala prohibitum. There is nothing inherently evil in my asking Councilmember Funk for $5 for a cup of coffee 2 or 3 times, okay? It's just annoying, okay? It does disturb his public peace. You are well within your rights to prohibit that, okay? But I want to make this simple. And to get it simple, I don't want to have to prove defendant's conduct. I want to be able to prove that he asked once, he's not supposed to, we're done. Harassment usually requires that intent thing. And I don't have to crawl inside a defendant's head. That's why we think we need a different set of ordinances to address most of these things.
That was my question was, is there currently a problem where we're arresting people for behavior that is similar and not covered? And that's why we were thinking we need another ordinance for that behavior, and then we're not getting convictions for those. So do we have an example of how many arrests were made in the last year? And were there any of those litigated?
That's Captain Schaefer.
No, I haven't.
I wanted to get Captain Schaefer up here.
Captain Rod Schaefer, Police Department. Sir, I can't speak to that intelligently, meaning I don't have the statistics in front of me. What I do know is our goals is basically education, deterrence, and enforcement. So if we're talking about the group that was down here, 2nd and Douglas, or 3rd and Douglas, that set up their tables and were blocking the road or blocking the street when people were trying to come through, we had numerous calls. We sent officers down and we talked to them. And by education deterrence, we pushed them away from that area. They end up going to Target. Now they're on private property, so we have another list of problems. The problem is a lot of this loitering and panhandling comes down to our unhoused population the transient population that comes through. Our goal is not to put the unhoused folks in jail. Our goal is to try to help them, and we do have services in place, but by putting these stronger ordinances, the panhandling and the loitering, then we have some teeth behind it. The public peace disturbance, to try to get somebody on that, again, we're having to show some sort of intent. Same thing with harassment. We don't have the numbers. We can get them for you, but as of right now, I can't list them off.
Yeah, and I know this is an initial presentation, so I just think, like, if we're moving forward with drafting an ordinance, probably having the data behind it would be good.
Agreed.
To see what is the problem that we're trying to address in the community. And I'm not saying there isn't a problem, because I know there is unhoused individuals roaming throughout the community. I have seen, examples of what we've been talking about here tonight in the community. I don't know. I'm just curious as to what level that is. Like, are you guys being called out a lot? It sounds like it would have been helpful the other night in the garage, but just as some feedback, I think it's just interesting, intriguing. So I appreciate your efforts.
Moving on from this point, we will at least have statistical data that we can look at, and so you can have a good view of what we're enforcing, why we're enforcing, and who's going to jail. Again, going back to the unhoused population, and again, I'm not trying to go down a rabbit hole, but a lot of those people are also dealing with mental health issues. And we have a very robust mental health provider with Rediscover that works with our department, and we try to get them services whenever possible. But the problem is they keep coming around, and they plant themselves in different locations. And again, a lot of times they're panhandling. They're looking for money. They're looking for a handout. So again, education, deterrence, and enforcement. What we try to do is, try to move them on or get them in our system so we can get them the assistance they need. When we run out of the teeth or they don't want to work with our system, having these ordinances in place can help us in the future, if nothing else, to charge them on the criminal side, but get them in the mental health court as well. Right. And again, I kind of went down a rabbit hole, but if that makes sense.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. I appreciate it. My other question, and I've heard anecdotally that there's a problem downtown, and that's kind of why downtown Lee Summit was kind of targeted and being one of the zones. We have lots of other activity centers throughout our community, potentially, like Summit Woods was referenced, the M150 corridor. I mean, there's lots of other examples of, I know we're trying to preserve the value and the investment that we've made in downtown Lee Summit. I'm just curious, is there a problem in downtown Lee Summit that we're trying to address?
I believe my opinionated answer is we have more foot traffic in the downtown corridor than we do elsewhere. Most people are transient when they're going to the malls, whether it's Summit Woods or in the 150 corridor. They go in, they do what they need to do, and leave. They don't hang out, and they're not usually pedestrian traffic going to and fro, especially when we open up here in next month. So by putting a little bit more of a target on the downtown corridor, we'll have my opinion, a better ability to limit that and try to displace any problems that we could have in the future by having the panhandling and the loitering ordinances in place.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your efforts and your time and research.
Commissioner Trafton, if I may add just one thing that's, I'll say, different between the downtown and, I'll say, Summit Woods or Summit Fair, and that is public property versus private property, right-of-way versus private parking lots in private areas as well. So that does make it a little bit different as to why downtown itself is a little bit more called out.
I appreciate that additional explanation, Mr. Elam. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Okay. So I just had a question. As I'm listening to all this and wanting to bring up even more ordinance in the future, do we have the police staff or resources to handle the extra ordinances, which means probably extra calls, more runs on all this stuff? So will that be a problem?
I will say that Chief Forbes is working on that as we speak every day. Again, we're continuing to hire and get our forces in place. So yes, we will. But again, it's a constant process. But getting the ordinances on the book is not going to make it harder for us. It'll actually make it easier for us in the long run. And again, it's a continual process to get, hiring where it needs to be, but we're better than we ever have been before. And, that's thanks to the council on that side.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. I don't think we have any further questions. Again, thank you for the presentation. It was phenomenal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the World Cup 2025-7036, World Cup 2026 Planning Ordinance Discussion. Mr. Elam.
All right, good afternoon once again. Happy to be here to discuss some things related to the World Cup. Now, So I'm going to kick things off again, and we have, I'll say, a large team that has been working on the World Cup for, I'll say, several months now, identifying things, participating in community groups, talking, trying to get as much information as possible. But I think everybody knows that the information that's been coming out from FIFA and KC 2026 has been a little bit slow at times, and that's just kind of part of the nature of the process. There still are a lot of unknowns associated with World Cup, so there's a lot of assumptions I think that are being made. But what we have done is that we have taken these different topics that we've heard and we've had discussions on. We've put together, I'm just call this a simple matrix here that shows what these different categories of potential items are, what the topic is, what ordinances do we currently have in place for that, because again, education is a big thing. We have a number of ordinances that are currently in place, and then we took a look at it from staff's perspective and as well as the feedback that we're receiving from the community and from the council, and made some recommended changes. And the way that we want this to go is again, this is a conversation, that the results of this conversation will lead to what we're calling, I'm going to call it an omnibus ordinance, that is potentially a temporary ordinance that makes several changes related in these different areas for a defined period of time. And for that defined period of time, at the end of this, we can then go back and make a determination as to whether or not any of those ordinance changes might benefit from being permanent ordinance changes after the event, after we have the ability to review that. So again, this has been put together by staff in administration, development services, public works, police, fire. I know I'm probably missing others, and so I'm going to have each individual kind of come up and talk through each one of these. We want to make sure that we're hitting on each one of these. Pause. Is that direction make sense? Do you have feedback on that direction? And go through this line. I'm going to take some notes and I'll chime in from over there. But we're going to start with special events, and you'll see in here like block parties, for example. We have special event regulations in Chapter 29, specifically related to traffic control, that deal with block parties. And so with this, I will have, does George or Hector want to come up and talk about this? It's George. I will say, too, as we're kind of working through this, a general theme from staff or a general recommendation on a number of these different items is that we think that the public right-of-way and the public spaces and the public parking lots should be used for vehicular movement and traffic and parking. A number of these different ordinances, such as block parties or parades, require a street to be closed. Our recommendation is during this period, we don't allow street closures. And we'll also talk specifically about food trucks and things like that. We don't think that we should really be allowing food trucks to take up public parking during this time. That's parking that is owned and maintained by the city on that. Again, that's a recommendation from the city. So that general theme that we're seeing is that we are not wanting to utilize the public right-of-way for, I'll say, private uses during this time period of the World Cup. Okay, all right. We're going to kind of go through this a little bit. So yeah. So that's a big theme with block parties. So for example,
can we
go
ask
ahead.
one question?
Ask all the questions away.
So this is the time frame of downtown days, right? So what is that? What does that mean for that, or is that not?
So downtown days is actually before this time frame that this
Okay.
is currently recommended. Because if you look on the block parties specifically, we got June 11th, 2026 to July 19th,
Oh, so it's the
26.
weekend before typically?
The
Okay.
weekend before.
Okay, good.
And Downtown Days wouldn't be considered a block party. That is a much bigger event, a much bigger special event. But if somebody wanted to come and propose an event that was going to shut down downtown during a defined window, we don't believe that it's the best use of resources during that time to allow an event like that. Because it is a major draw and it has a major traffic impact and major safety concerns throughout that time period. It requires a lot of resources. So again, block parties, I'll go ahead and if we can, everybody just kind of teed up, ready to go. Parades are another one. I know Chief Forbes has a lot of comments on parades and kind of some challenges with that. So that I'll let Chief Forbes talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Chair, members. Travis Forbes, Chief of Police. Parades very similar to block parties, actually, with regard to shutting down lanes of traffic. Additionally, we heavily anticipate that police and fire resources will be pretty severely drawn upon during the World Cup. Not just for internal City of Lee Summit services, but for assistance to our partners who are actually hosting matches and hosting the teams and things of that nature. For example, we have a EOD team, we have K-9 teams, we have things of that nature that we fully anticipate they'll be asking us for assistance with. Obviously, we want to take care of Lee Summit first, but we want to be good community partners as well, so we'll be kind of threading that needle. So in addition to blocking vehicular traffic, as Mr. Elam mentioned, we are very concerned about spreading our resources way too thin and not being able to secure the city to the degree that we would like. So any questions about parades? Our parade ordinance is fairly liberal, and up to and including the fees that we charge are extremely low for parades.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
So, like the 4th of July so I know Rain Tree specifically, they require a lot of police presence to shut down the road, so that will not be happening next year then?
It's our recommendation not to authorize that next year because of those concerns.
So I believe they're already planning for it, so if everything goes right, when can we let them know, like, this?
Well, and I believe, and Mr. Elam can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we are seeking some input and guidance from the committee. So if there's somewhat of a consensus with this, we can have those discussions with our community partners. We didn't want to be presumptuous and start telling people we're not going to allow this or that, and then have it kind of reversed or changed in a different direction later on down the road.
But they'll have plenty of advance notice then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect, thank you.
I think that's a great thing to add and a great consideration is there are a few, I'll say legacy events or events that tend to occur on a yearly basis. Now, those events are supposed to receive or to seek an application and get a permit. I will say some of those legacy events may not always get their stuff in on time, even though they've been doing it for years. And that does create challenges for staff overall. And in particular, around this time of year, we are anticipating that to be a big challenge because of mutual aid and just what may be going on in the area. So, but we do have the option if there's the desire of the council to say, let's say, if there is an established event that you'd like to consider allowing that established event, then that is direction that we would like to have. Because right now our recommendation is that during this time frame that we don't allow really any of those types of events.
Does that include like Legacy Blast too?
Legacy Blast would be just before this window. Legacy Blast or a major city, actually it would be
during.
in this time frame, but specific city sponsored events, we would think we would seek an exception from that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And I kind of panned down a bit because of food trucks and stuff, not necessarily a PD issue, but fireworks displays, and I know Mr. Snook is here too. You know, we are concerned about being able to do the job that we're able to do this year with safety, but it's an important city event. Also, I believe the 250th anniversary of our country, so I think we're going to make every effort to try to do those as safely as we can. So, and I don't, Joe may have some more to say about that. I know there's some other PD-related stuff, I believe, later on down the road here on this. Liquor licensing is a police department function currently, and we are recommending no changes be made to the liquor licensing process to make it more liberal. I think there was a comment about potentially tightening up some of the ordinances with regard to liquor usage, which is a different issue somewhat. The police department also handles liquor enforcement as well. So, but we are recommending no changes to our liquor licensing process. To a large degree, those are also controlled by state law. So there's only so much we can do, as the discussion we had earlier about the 300 feet issue. There's only so much we can do per state law. Peddlers and solicitors is also a police function. Again, we recommend that we make no changes. We'll probably have to do quite a bit of education on what's acceptable and what's not. I know pop-up events is another issue that we'll be talking about later on in this presentation. And that might be it as far as the PD is concerned. With special events, if you look at our special event ordinances, there's specific types that are kind of, the entertainment events, for example, and the commercial special events requiring additional security of 1,000 people. If you look at our ordinance, there's athletic events too. There's different types. And really our recommendation is to not approve those types of events during this period because of the potential resource issues that we may have, and also because traffic concerns, adding to the traffic that we already have. In addition, we're talking about things like limiting leave usage and things of that nature in order to cover this. So we're very concerned about making sure we have enough public safety resources during this time. Who's keyed up next? Ryan? I'll try to skip ahead and capture all the PD
We've got a
stuff.
question real fast.
Yes.
Thank you. So just going back over these special events, like I completely understand we don't want to have a huge event like the parades that you have to have officers standing to block traffic and all that. But what about for the people that like always have a block party on their cul-de-sac every year at this time, you know, and they just get the barricades and put them up that doesn't require police presence? Are we still going to tell them, no, they can't do that?
I think there's a concern with the traffic flow in our discussions we had as a group about what we would potentially recommend to CEDC and just the resources that would be required from the city for dropping off the barricades, picking up the barricades. We could need those barricades in other situations, perhaps where approved as a parking spot for the event. So I think there's some concerns about the block parties at that point. And a lot of block parties that occur, for example, in the neighborhood where I live in Lee Summit, they hold those in areas that the HOA owns, you know, so there are some options to get them off the roadway, and you don't need a permit for those types of events, so there are some options. And I think it's uncomfortable, and we'd love to be in a service city and trying to help everyone out in these celebrations, but we're going to be pretty taxed, I think, during this period.
Yeah, I completely understand that. Okay, and so I know that we're having this discussion here now, but have we yet had any discussions with like our downtown partners or the chamber about what we're thinking about this?
So we've been involved with the LS Goal 26 and from a staff perspective, and so we've received their feedback. But you know, this is not specific to that effort. This really is I'll say a staff-driven, and this is really the start of that public conversation that needs to occur, so we can know what direction that the council is leaning, if other conversations that we need to have in order to ensure that that there is a wide variety of voices in this. But at this point, this is really, I'll say, staff's recommendation from a resource perspective and some of those concerns.
Okay, well, I completely understand where we're coming from on all this. Just in other meetings that I've sat in regarding World Cup, there's been a lot of discussion about having major events, watch parties and such like that. So I don't know how we would be able to do something like that and have these ordinances in place during that time frame. So that would just be my concern. I obviously want to make sure that we can protect our city and all the people in our city, and I know that everybody's going to be spread very thin during this time. I just would hate to shut down something that people are already discussing and planning and thinking about, but haven't brought it to this level yet. So I just would want to get plenty of feedback from our businesses, especially in the downtown area, on if they had any plans going on, and then all the rest of our partners. Thank you.
Yeah, so just one comment on that is I think really primarily what we're concerned about is the use of the public property and the public roadways. There's no intent in any of this to really, I'll say, limit any business's ability for having a watch party or having a gathering or anything like that on private property. Now, we do have concerns if a private event on private property is expected to get to a certain size from a security standpoint. And we've developed a bit of a matrix that we're still working through to make, I'll say, some threshold items a little bit more clear on what that is. And we're going to be looking to bring that forward as well through there. But many of these recommendations are, I'll say, really set up to allow things to occur on private property and allow them to be ran by private individuals and not impact the public and the public property is the intent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go ahead. Yep, go ahead for it.
Yeah, as a follow-up to that question, I mean, one of my questions was, are there community sanctioned events? Because why wouldn't we want to try to draw? I mean, I know there's going to be people already coming to the community. The numbers vary, but are there already going to be community sanctioned events on community property areas that you know of?
So again, that is, I'll say, a bit dependent on there. So from there's no official community sanctioned event at this point that other than, I'll say, the items in the parks for Legacy Blast. I know Joe can talk about some of the stuff that they've talked about. But as far as I'll say, there's been some conversations about, okay, how many events do we have? But we haven't really had any conversations about who's holding those events. How do we want those to be organized? Those are all things that we can seek direction on, and from there. And so, as part of this conversation through there, do we as a community, or does the council desire to have a certain number of events or things like that? How do we want to handle that from that perspective? Is really direction that we need from the council. And then we can react and determine how to implement those things overall. Now, I'll say, big question mark is Green Street. We've got Green Street over here. That space is set up to hold events and not impact the public right away and not impact the public flow. So we will be able to have events over there. We'll have a manager over there that will establish that. But at the same time, we're not going to be able to staff 45 days of constant 10,000 people right there. So a little bit of it is a little bit iterative of the back and forth on exactly what we want to accomplish as a community overall on some of that too.
Yeah, I mean, I could see having watch parties at Green Street or the amphitheater wanting to have fireworks displays around those events. And so why wouldn't we want to promote that as a community in support of the World Cup and trying to draw people to it as a tourism kind of thing? So, but I understand we're trying to balance safety, security of a large community with a massive influx of people coming to the surrounding areas. The other concern or question I have kind of is related to Council Member Carlisle's comment around, like, I understand pushing private events to private spaces or like HOA right-of-ways, but I know my HOA, we bring in food trucks for our events, and so now we're saying we can't have food trucks, but we can bring in our own food. So, I mean, I guess there's a delicate balance to what you're restricting versus what you're allowing, because you're saying, oh, you can have your event, it just needs to be on your own private property, but by the way, you can't have any supporting kinds of things for that. So, I mean, just something to think about.
Well, and again, I think that if it's a private HOA parking lot, I'll say my HOA will bring in food trucks and have them in one of the HOA parking lots.
We park them on the streets.
So parking them on the street.
Yeah, we park them on the streets.
For that, yeah, we would be limiting that would be a potential, so.
Okay, I'm gonna follow up on what he was saying. So I guess what I'm worried about, I don't want to overreact. And then it affects the people who actually live here while we're trying to cater to people who don't live here. So I guess that's where I want to make sure we find that balance we were kind of talking about, where to me, when I'm hearing you describe no food trucks on a street, that I don't think anybody from the World Cup's even going to go down or care to go. Like, why would we restrict? I guess I'm not understanding if a food truck wants to sit there, because like we have an HOA, but we don't have an HOA property within our neighborhood. It's just all houses. We don't have a clubhouse or anything like that. So therefore, it would be disrupting the community that's doing probably the one thing they do per year that creates community. I don't find a good enough reason to say, nope, not for this year, when it's not like it's, oh, we're used to doing it downtown, so still let us do it. I would understand that more so, but I guess I just don't understand a street in a neighborhood. I'm not sure how that's really, when we don't need police presence necessarily. So I guess I'm not understanding why that would affect anything for the World Cup.
So I think part of it too is that this can be written in a number of different ways too. Like if a food truck is going to come in and let's say they're just going to be in a single parking stall or something like that for a specified period of time, or it's a couple hours for a single event, that's different than if a food truck wants to come in and park for a week in a single spot. And so we can work through those different regulations as to what that could look like to allow those things that have happened before to ensure that we're addressing the correct problem.
Okay, so we could even have it say, it is allowed as long as it's for, say, like 4 hours or up to 6 hours, no more than that. Okay, because I feel like that would be more reasonable to be like just no whatsoever, because obviously that makes sense because we don't want something blocking it for a large period of time. Okay, that makes more sense. And that would be the direction I'd prefer to go. So we're not restricting the people who live here and want to still enjoy, who maybe don't even care about the World Cup. So I would prefer that direction personally.
Yeah, and I think as a group, we talked a lot about the timeline specific to the World Cup. So maybe some of our community partners, our HOAs and things of that nature, if they want to make it World Cup centric, they would probably want to do it during this time. But if they don't, and it's not around the July 4th holiday, maybe they consider pushing it to August or holding it in early June or something like that instead. So maybe starting to get the gears moving in some of our community partners to think about, well, how do we avoid this rush of the World Cup where we know the city's resources are going to be pretty heavily taxed.
Okay, thank you.
Who's got food trucks, right? Is that you?
Hector or Shannon, you want to come up and keep talking through our food truck permitting, food cart permitting, and some, I'll let you hit all of the rest of the special events.
So good afternoon, Hector Soto, Senior Planner. So just to tag on to what's already been stated about food trucks, yes, I would agree that the primary concern would be the food trucks in our commercial areas. They've historically not been an issue in residential areas. They've mostly been, where we have been made aware of them, they've been typically off of the public right-of-way. But yes, to everyone's point here, the verbiage or some of the ideas that have been put before you here today are just more kind of jumping off points for discussion to identify what some of those areas of concern might be, where perhaps we might inadvertently be over-regulating something that might negatively impact some of the neighborhoods and their ability to enjoy events that they've taken part of over the years. So we'll take note of that particular concern with the residential areas. As it relates to commercial areas, I think that probably the most substantive items to discuss and get your feedback on would be that, one, again, we would not, at this point, we're not allowing or considering allowing the use of food trucks in public parking areas, public spaces, again, so as not to further impact the anticipated demand for our downtown parking and the impact that they may have on area businesses. So, but one thing that could be considered is the verbiage as it relates to food trucks being allowed on private property. And one of those areas that perhaps might be most impactful is that under a current ordinance, food trucks in the central business district are limited only to the hours of 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. So one of the items that would be brought before you for consideration is what your thoughts are on relaxing those to allow them during lunch, lunchtime, dinner time, those types of things. I mean, if you care to know it in future meetings, I mean, there's a little bit of backstory as to why those hours were so restricted, but it basically, in a nutshell, had to do with the potential negative impact that Planning Commission, City Council thought that allowing food trucks in downtown might have on our brick and mortar restaurants. Where you might just allow food truck just to roll up and park right in front of them. So that's where that was born out of. And at the time, some of the food trucks that just did come before us were kind of more targeting weekend kind of bar, later evening events anyway. So at the time, they didn't have an issue with it, that restriction from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. But that would probably be the most impactful right off the top. Another one that might be kind of a secondary point of consideration is that if we were to consider where you do have perhaps the food trucks overlapping with other types of downtown events like festivals, there's also some verbiage that in the downtown in the downtown, the public right of way, that food trucks are not allowed within 1/2 mile of the boundary of a special event. So to use an example of downtown days, the idea was you don't want folks that are not part of that event or that might not want to pay for the permitting or whatever to be part of that event to benefit by just locating it like right outside of that event. So that might be something that during this time period you might want to consider lessening. So again, those are probably the two most impactful. And again, most of those really, our concern right now is primarily on the private property side. As we've discussed, we're not looking for any changes necessarily on the public property side or in the public right-of-way, except for these concerns that you've had or expressed about residential areas. So that's really all I had on the commercial food truck permitting. So yeah.
And it's really just a comment, and that, so I would just recommend that moving forward, when you say CBD or Central Business District, that you have something that defines that area for people who might be watching or watch in the future. Because, I mean, we can say that, you know what that is in your head because you deal with it daily, right? But yeah, to actually show that area of what that is would be great. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So I'll move on to food cart permitting. Really, the only change there would be that food carts, like your hot dog carts, are currently allowed in public parking spaces as well as in the public sidewalks. So our recommendation would be that during that defined time period from June 11th to the 19th of July, that we not allow for food trucks or food carts to be located within the public sidewalks or parking spaces. And again, just to maintain pedestrian and vehicular flow and not to stress the inventory that we have based on the anticipated demand we're going to have for those spaces. Again, this would only impact those in the public spaces. So if they're able to get permission from any private property owner to locate on private property, that would be fine. We're just looking to maintain, again, those public rights of way. Any concerns or anything in that? No? Okay. The next item, and as Ryan mentioned, kind of special events is kind of an umbrella term, so it touches on different departments. So I'll kind of go down to my next one. So fireworks, for example, they were broken into two different types. Personal use, which I won't speak for fire, but you can see here that no changes are recommended to the ordinances regarding personal use. But large public displays, that is covered under special events. So like your Legacy Blast, the two other big ones, really maybe the only two other big ones would be Lakewood and Raintree. They do their big fireworks displays. So those would be those legacy types of events that would fall within that World Cup time period, but wanted to bring forward to you as to whether or not that would be something that you would be looking at as just your feedback on whether or not the preference would be to allow for those types of legacy events that have those established histories of being put on over long periods of time, or if the desire might be to just say, no, not this year. Perhaps the city one because the city is sponsored event, but perhaps not the subdivision one. So that's really just kind of more for discussion. And I did note here that in order, because there will be a round of 32 game on July 3rd of next year, there's that shift, or that proposed shift of Legacy Blast to the 2nd of July. So any feedback on those non-city related, non-city sponsored legacy events?
I have a comment.
Okay, go.
So once again, I completely understand where we're coming from on this. Since we do know about those other two big events, I wouldn't wait for them to come to us. I would reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're thinking. What do you guys think about that? And get their feedback, because we know people don't really listen until we've already done something. Sure. So I would just be proactive in that.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Let's see, so moving on to the next one. Mobile vendors, that would kind of capture more like the pop-up type of vendors that you see during you've seen during the Super Bowl or World Series, set up in the parking lot to sell memorabilia, souvenirs, those types of things. Right now, we're not recommending any changes. They do go through a special event permit because we do internally look at how they set up, where they set up, and the potential impact on internal traffic circulation, as well as the ability for emergency services to get in and out, and any negative impact that there might be in the way they set up regarding traffic transitioning from the public right-of-way onto private property. So, right now, we're not recommending any changes to that. Again, we'll just continue looking at what those potential traffic and on-site impacts might be. Any thoughts on those? No? Okay. The next one is kind of a broader kind of catch-all, commercial special events. Now, right now, the recommended language is stating that we would not issue any approvals for commercial events requiring additional security, which would be, the number that was put forward was events that might have attendance of 1,000 plus individuals. I can't say that right now we really have a history of holding events like that, which isn't to say that we might not get something to that during that time period, but to this point, I can't think of anything that is really kind of outside and kind of more the public realm or the impacts the public realm that we would have at that scale. I mean, if we're looking at those types of attendance for events, I mean, you'd really be looking at our larger venues for any kind of gathering over 1,000, which might be like a Green Street or the amphitheater or or Paragon Star, but, you know, again, we just don't have that history of those types of events here.
If I can add just one thing to this commercial special events and kind of the 1,000-person that's been discussed, and that really is from a security perspective. I think PD was the one that recommended the 1,000 for various reasons. But the way that what's been popping into my head when I think about these different events and like the scale of some of these events, it's not in our community, but Independence Center recently had a large carnival in their parking lot. So that's the scale of event that that'd be a brand new event. We don't think that would be something that we would want to accommodate during this time period. Something along those lines.
Nothing on this one? Okay. The next one would be the entertainment events, and so that would capture things like festivals, fairs. Now, we did break it out separately, specifically for this, but fireworks, we fall under entertainment special events. Right now, the verbiage that's put forth is no approvals for entertainment events between June 1st and July 25th. Now, with that, one of the items that was brought up was that downtown days would fall under the category of entertainment events. So again, we would, to call back to that discussion that was held regarding kind of those legacy events, you know, that's something that, of course, we would want your feedback on as to what your thoughts are on those. Again, that's, besides that, in Oktoberfest, which does not fall during this time period, that would be the only event that we've historically had during this time period. And again, it is a legacy event, so we typically know what we're dealing with. I've not been in discussions with the group that puts the event on, so I don't know if there's any thought or consideration of anticipation of expanding the event, just knowing that there would be additional individuals in the area for the games. But right now, we're not looking, I guess, except for possibly that legacy event, to have a carve-out for it, we're not looking at any other approvals outside of that one, if that's the desire of this committee. And again, that one is, again, taxing the public right-of-way, police, fire services that are already going to be kind of spread thin during that time. Any thoughts on that one beyond, I'm assuming, the carving out of legacy events?
No, go ahead.
I mean, if you know Downtown Days is an event in this time frame and you're going to allow it, I would just asterisk that and say, you know, precluding Downtown Days, just because I think that people might get confused around, like, okay, so they're, you know, one version we're saying, yeah, we're still going to allow Downtown Days, but this clearly would say to me that's not allowed. So you noted it in another of your stuff. I mean, just something to think about.
Yeah, we will do that.
Yeah, and I think any of these legacy events, when we come back with actual ordinance language, they'd be specifically called out as exceptions, some caveats and everything to that. And I think part of that and part of this conversation, though, is really helping to clearly define what those caveats and exceptions will be. So I'll say it's just very clear.
So moving on to athletic events, I mean, again, those would be covering your 5Ks, your marathons, which we've had a history of having downtown 5Ks. It's a popular location. We suspended them during the time that we've had construction because the start-finish line had always been right in the front of the plaza. At this point, just internal discussions, we've been looking at just not having them downtown, period, or just adjusting some of those pre-established routes in the downtown area if we are going to allow them. But again, during this time, again, to free up the public right-of-way and to not further impact public emergency services, we're looking at not allowing these types of events during that, I guess, almost 2-month time period from June 1st to the end of, almost to the end of July. Signage, we will expect a lot of signage during that time. So as it relates to that, we've got, the areas that you might particularly be impacted there that you're going to see is more your temporary signage, your off-premise signs, your snipe signs, which are defined under ordinance, which would be signs that, that people might put on like fences, or they might put on like light poles or anything like that. Now, again, we're looking to perhaps grant some additional allowances to those, although to make it clear that we're not at all looking to relax any ordinance to allow private signage on or on public property. So within the public right-of-ways, no, we're still not going to allow that, but we're looking to lessen or slacken some of those regulations, or at least the enforcement of them, as it relates to folks that might be putting up, the flags of the countries that they may be rooting for during the event. You would expect a lot of businesses, restaurants to have a lot of events, specials, those types of things, watch parties. So we are looking at or asking for feedback on consideration of lessening the strictness of those regulations during the time period that runs, from May 1st, because there's going to be quite a bit of run-up coming to it. And then covering through August 1st, just to get you past the final, which I don't remember off the top of my head when the final game is going to be held. But getting to the end of August or end of July into August 1st, we'll cover that. And then again, because we expect a proliferation of temporary signs. Those typically do require a permit to be applied for and paid for. So because we anticipate that there will be a lot, one of the items for your consideration is whether we would just suspend the permitting requirement, but still just enforce the size, and I guess perhaps the number, just to better control a little bit what the clutter might be. So.
No, I like that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mr. Fung.
We do. From my many years on the planning commission, we have the king of signs, Commissioner Trafton, with us, so we can all be quiet and just let him tell us all about signs.
I was not going to get started on signs.
At this point, that kind of covers everything on my end of it. So, I mean, I see there's shared mobility operations, technology deployments. I don't know who's going to speak on those. No changes are recommended, so I don't know if anyone specifically is going to speak to those.
Yeah, I believe George can give us a little bit more insight into this, but the gist of it is that there's, I'll let George take it over.
Okay, good evening, George Binger, city engineer. Some of these I'm going to group together because it's addressing right-of-way and right-of-way management. And just, right-of-way is probably the greatest or the largest asset the city has with infrastructure and real estate. It's also the greatest liability exposure the city has. So with this, so that's like one of the issues we were talking before with block parties. Public Works go out and drop off the signs, but Public Works does not set them up. It's happening on city, within city right-of-way real estate. So if the signs aren't set up properly or anything like that, then it becomes a risk possibility for the city. Shared mobility, this is like the Lime scooters, the Bird scooters, the Rena scooters. They're currently prohibited within the city, and so we're recommending that remain that way. Technology deployment, the wireless, like small wireless facilities. These are like the 5G systems. And the current ordinance, there's a process where plans have to be submitted, they're reviewed and approved as far as location and type and things of that nature. And we're recommending no changes. That was written several years ago. The state has, the telecom lobby has a very good lobby at the state level. So it's a very wide open statute. So this ordinance kind of was our chance to get some control on that. So we're recommending no changes so we don't place that at risk. And then the public parking lots, on-street parking, and use of public right-of-way. Again, we're recommending no changes to that. This gets into, and then as you see there, kind of as discussed previously, not issuing traffic control permits for public parking lots or streets. And a lot of that's just to preserve the parking capacity, as previously discussed. And on the right-of-way, a lot of this too will get to our encroachment policy. This is where certain encroachments are allowed or not allowed. In the downtown area, we've already made provisions for that frontage zone where people can, or businesses can choose to enter a license agreement with the city to put, if they want to put tables, potted plants, decorations in front of their business, they can do that through the encroachment policy, so we're recommending no changes to that. And and then I believe there's one on the last page when we get to, and then the other one from Public Works is looking at this illicit discharge. Again, this is a stormwater quality issue. It's a requirement. We're recommending no changes. Usually the biggest issue we'll see will be like with street vendors is the grease discharge going down the storm drain. So again, we're recommending no changes to that. So that's kind of a brief summary again. So you can see from the Public Works perspective, right away, we're really not recommending a whole lot of changes.
Who's got any questions? No, that's great. Thank you.
Then,
Can we put that in there?
Shannon's going to come talk about a few licensing things, and I'm assuming including short-term rentals.
Yes. I'm sorry, I got new contacts today, so I can't see. There we go. All right, so Shannon McGuire, Planning Manager. So with regards to business license, currently one of the requirements for a business license applicant is to show a letter from the state that there's no tax due. So one of the recommendations would be to amend that requirement to allow the applicant to self-certify that they owe no businesses. Sometimes that's a delay in receiving that letter, so it helps streamline that process. And then for second locations, typically right now we require a separate business license. So we recommend that for that second license, instead of a full business license, as to create more of an abbreviated business license to help, again, to streamline that process as well. So. But still charge that same application fee as we require for all their business license. When it comes to short-term rentals, on the licensing on short-term rentals, currently we do have restrictions on lot sizes and the location of those short-term rentals. Currently, the lot size restriction is 1 acre or greater outside the downtown area. Within the downtown area, we don't have that lot size restriction. But we also do have residential building type restrictions. So currently it's restricted to single or duplex type structures and no ADUs. So we look at maybe relaxing that to allow a different type structures to open up those availability for those short-term rentals, as well as look at that bedroom max. Right now, you can only rent 2 bedrooms out of a home. So even if you have a five-bedroom house, only 2 of those would be allowed. So maybe look at relaxing that as well. We would still require a business license, but again, creating that abbreviated temporary license application to help streamline that process.
Yeah.
So this is an item that we have heard a lot about from a number of different people wanting to know, what the regulations are, what are we going to allow, and this is one of those items here that essentially what we're proposing is to really relax a lot of the current restrictions on short-term rentals, but provide an opportunity and a path for those to occur in a manner that we know essentially kind of where they're at, and so that we can ensure that like the health safety items are taken care of. They've attested to that, and we've got contact information for those individuals. So I just wanted to pause and reiterate that because we can make some of these changes, and knowing that there are other ordinances in place. Say if somebody has a noise ordinance violation or anything like that we're not recommending any changes to, but this is a big change from our current ordinance for this temporary time period.
Wait, so just so I understand, so for the short-term rental, we're going outside of just downtown, like that, it can be anywhere in the city. Am I understanding that correctly?
That's what the current proposal is, based off of kind of the feedback that we've heard from the community.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes.
So is there something, that was a great point. So Is there something that we could put out? Because I feel like a lot of, kind of like what she had said earlier, where people don't know until things are in place, then it's too late. But can we notify, or is there a way to make HOAs or neighborhoods aware that this is going to be into effect? So that way they're aware of what may come in their neighboring property. And then for HOAs to be aware, like, hey, if you want to have time to restrict it within your HOA, you can, instead of it just being like, oh, you should have watched the meeting or whatever. Can there be some sort of awareness out there so people are aware, so they have time to make these changes if they want to?
Yeah, we can always come up with a communications plan in order to put in place to, as an educational awareness, I almost said promote, but it's really more, it's promoting awareness of what the regulations are overall, but that is definitely something that we can do.
Okay, because I feel like before I'd be on board with that, I would like for that to happen, just that way. It's like, hey, we did put it out there, we did try to educate, and you did have an opportunity within an HOA to prevent it if you so chose, or to advocate for that within your neighborhood. So just so we have something to fall back on, because I know the reason we haven't done it in the first place, regardless of the World Cup, is because we know there's just a lot of things that go wrong. So I just want to make sure we're doing everything we can to be proactive in that area. And we are putting a sunshine on this. So a start and finish date on this. Okay, so after that sunshine, it goes back to the way we have it.
That is the current proposal. We would write it to where it would have an end date in there, but we would also put a process in there for us to, again, come back and evaluate challenges to then be able to make a determination if anything wanted to stay to be permanent, it could, but it would have an automatic sunset in it.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we don't get into a thing where we change something and then it's going to be hard to be like, well, it worked good enough or whatever, and then we're in a position to where we're having to backtrack and undo a lot of work just for such a short period of time and for a very rare event. I guess I don't know, I'm just really making sure we don't get into an awkward position with the community.
Yeah, all of these they can be written either way. They could either be permanent or time bound. We're proposing them to be time bound.
Okay.
And I guess all I'm saying is that, I guess just a best practice to review, did they have challenges or not? Do we want to move forward another way? It would be another process if we wanted to change things at the end, so.
So just part of that review process, looking at other cities and looking at the problems they've faced, doing this exact same thing? Because they're not going back. Is that part of the review process?
I mean, it could be. And when I say the review process, I'm talking about the whole package as kind of an after action associated with the World Cup in general.
Okay. Just because I've had a few conversations with elected officials from other cities, and they've faced a lot of problems with the short-term rentals in their city, Overland Park and Kansas City mainly. So I just want to make sure that we're not opening up a can of worms that we're not ready to deal with, because it just doesn't seem to go well. At least it won't be the exception, I don't think. So, thank you.
So I guess just for clarity purposes on that, is the committee want us to bring forward recommendations that loosen them up for the entire community, or do you want less restrictive or more restrictive? That's kind of part of the dialogue, I guess. I know that it's very clear, time bound.
Yeah, that's a good question. So you're asking whether or not we want to keep it downtown only, or have it opened to the rest, like it's stated here?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, I personally would prefer downtown only and keep it as it is and loosen those rules a little bit, just because people already are kind of used to having the rentals and that vibe. But I don't know, I guess that's where you guys need to chime in.
I'm kind of with Councilmember Hodges. I think, if we were to loosen this outside of downtown, I see Chief Hyden back there. I mean, I think there's a lot of work to be done for someone to get their license for a short-term rental and for that property to be inspected to be suitable versus, I mean, I think it would be something that would have to be done now, I don't say next week, but in the near future leading up to this, so we know that we're doing this the right way and not just opening the door and saying, yeah, I want to do it, but I would say I like the downtown area only. I think there's a lot of work that would have to go into that if we went outside of downtown, if that makes sense.
Ready for more thoughts? So my thoughts, and just from discussion that I have heard in the community as well, was that it be opened up for all of Lee Summit. Obviously, HOAs can restrict if they want to and what have you, but just during this time period, it would just be opened up. And I'm not saying that we would change the ordinance per se. I just we would add a secondary that would open that up just for the time frame, and then it would go away when that's finished.
So to kind of clarify that short-term rentals are allowed outside of downtown on lots that are larger than an acre. The recommendation is just to remove that acre requirement. It doesn't have to remove it wholly. Maybe you can lower it down to 3/4 acre, half an acre, or something like along those lines as well. So it does still limit how many are out there, and maybe not everyone eligible.
So I guess when we open up, I feel like it's kind of opening the floodgates up because people think, I can make quick money off this, just go somewhere, overcharge for my place in the middle of a neighborhood. I guess what precautions do we have in place, or will we have in place to ensure that people we're doing our due diligence to make sure people are actually registering? Because I feel like once this gets out that we've opened the floodgates, people are just going to start putting it on Airbnb and all this stuff. So, I mean, how are we going to control? I feel like there will be an influx of people. How are we going to regulate that, control that?
That is tough. It's tough now. If we don't open up the ability to become legal, I think we're going to have people out there that are just going to do it as well. So it does become an enforcement issue, and we do have our neighborhood services officers that we do open up those cases and enforce upon those as well.
Okay, good.
So this is a tough question because I understand most of the hotels we have in Lee Summit are just nowhere I'd ever keep my family, I'd ever stay at. So I can't imagine anyone would want to. But so if we're experiencing a lot of problems, do we have to, if we have is it called sunset, sunshine? Is that what it?
I mean, that's just terminology that I use. It's just a common term for.
Well, because I heard her say, but it's sunshine, so I don't know. I thought it was sunset. I just don't know the word of it.
Sunshine's not.
Sunset, okay. So does it have to, it's going to be for those specified dates, but if we're experiencing a lot of problems or if it's requiring a lot of resources as far as police, just looking at other cities and the problems they have with the on-street parking and the nonstop partying and the littering, if it's requiring too many resources, is that something that we could shorten as the time, in the middle of that time period, or is that something we have to, since we set that time frame, is that something we have to completely?
I'm gonna look at legal for a quick second, but
I guess while they're thinking about that, if there's other code violations, parking, trash, noise, we can pursue it through those ordinances, as well as potentially look at the business license revocation for specific instances. Whether or not legal can answer to can we change the time frame in the middle of the game? That's beyond me.
I suppose I'd probably have to learn more about exactly what we're talking about. When you sort of say generally change the rules in the middle of the game, what does that mean exactly? I think we need to give some thought to the timeframes and with enough advance notice so it's not surprising people.
So then the answer is
probably
probably no.
Early or extending it longer.
Okay.
It's more of a planning function rather than.
My only concern is, and I'm not completely against broadening the terms that we have currently, but my big concern is with Kansas City, they see an increase of crime at their short-term rentals. We're talking about making sure that we have enough PD enough resources to currently patrol everything that we have going on. So with that increase, with the short-term rental increase, is that going to put a strain on, I mean, just looking at other cities, Overland Park and Kansas City strengthened their short-term rental ordinances due to the influx of crime and everything that came with it. So I just want to make sure that we're not straining our current resources by doing something like this. But, I mean, as far as actually relaxing our current ordinance, I'm not completely against it just because, like I said, we have 2 good hotels in the city. But, yeah, I guess I would leave it up to, I don't have a super strong opinion. Well, I guess my opinion is kind of strong. But, like, as far as not relaxing, I'm okay with relaxing the ordinance if that's the consensus of the rest of the CEDC.
So you don't really have an answer on that. It's all feedback. It's all feedback. Yeah. Well, so I mean, are you wanting us to tell you what direction you want us to go, or you just want general opinions?
Looking for general opinion and feedback of,
okay,
of
so
how you
I
want.
feel like everybody kind of gave their input. Okay, so that's kind of what you're looking for right now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
I'll just add that
That's all I had.
feedback.
I'm not sure we heard that, the last statement.
Oh, sorry, my microphone went off, sir. I was in support of that recommendation, so I'm fine with it.
Okay. I think we ended on the most controversial one. Yeah, we saved the best for last. So just to kind of recap, I'll say kind of what I heard as big takeaways that we'll utilize to come back with some additional recommendations. One, don't overregulate neighborhoods. Don't overregulate the existing neighborhoods and the existing events that occur. That's kind of one of the big things I heard. Caveats for city events and having specific call-outs when we start coming into there. So hone in on those details as we come in, and so it's very clear and concise. And then short-term rentals need more discussion, essentially. So probably need to have a very specific conversation about pros and cons, timelines, and so we can draft a couple of different ordinances and have a little bit more data on some of those as well as we come back with that. And we can talk about the best way to bring that forward as well as the best way for educational campaigns for the community overall. Other things that I generally heard, most of the other recommendations seem to be in line with no real major challenges with many of the other recommendations. And that's where we're at.
All right, go ahead.
I think I just kind of got stuck on Councilmember Carlisle's comment, and I think no matter what we do in this instance and what we're anticipating people, I think our public services resources, probably both fire and police are going to be pretty taxed at this time. That I think if we do decide whether it be talking about the fireworks displays, I think during the athletic events, I think we have Tour de Lakes, we have several different bike, hike, all kinds of stuff that go on. And Councilmember Carlisle's comment that stuck with me is I think we need to let those people know sooner than later if that is the direction that we go, that like, hey, I think it's pretty self-explanatory to them that like at this point in time, we're not going to be able to accommodate from a safety perspective, that we need to let them know as soon as possible.
Absolutely, and I will say with like Tour de Lakes, for example, I know the Parks Department's already planning that and well aware and making adjustments to that schedule as a result of the World Cup.
Yep. Yeah, that sounds great. I think you summed it up very well.
Any additional feedback or any other things that you would like us to look into to bring back as it relates to some of this. We've already actually, on the staff side, thought of a few other things. So again, we're going to continue to look through this. Again, one of the things that we were talking about was camping. You know, regulations for tents in front yards, backyards, things like that on private property. Just is that something that we need to highlight or not? Just for an example.
Regulate the neighborhoods.
Don't regulate the neighborhoods.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, so moving on to roundtable. Does anybody have any roundtable? Staff have any roundtable?
I don't believe so.
Awesome. Okay, well then we will adjourn this meeting at 5:51. Have a great night.